The profit levels of 30, 40, 45%, 50%, they are achievable. If I were in the rent roll business, I would be buying rent rolls. Your property under management, your rent roll, tends to be a high volume, low margin type business.
Property management is so much bigger than that.
Let's start elevating these other opportunities to create return on a property for our owners so that we're not just talking about the rental income.
The unique competitive advantage in property management is the role of the person.
We need to coach them and help them understand that the role is not what it was even a year or 2 years ago. They need a different level of capability. You can't afford mistakes and you can't afford not to be growing.
You're listening to the Property Management Excellence Podcast for insights that drive rapid rental growth.
Oh, g'day, how you going? It's Phil Tarrant standing in for my colleague Alex Whitlock on the PMX podcast. Welcome. For those of you who don't know me, I am the CEO of Managed. I also talk about real estate a lot across a number of different podcasts. So if you don't know me, hello, how you going? It's not my first podcast. I've been doing a few of them, but this is my first for the PMX podcast, and I'm really intrigued with what Alex is trying to achieve with this podcast. A lot of people get caught up and swept up in property management and pigeonhole it into certain little areas, and that is the doing of property management, but it's a very vibrant business sector. I think there's a long way for growth and expansion and opportunities for property management into the future, and Manage, we're trying in our little way to get behind it and push it and prod it and support it through not only technology solutions, but helping to shape the narrative and the debate in and around property management, what the future for property management is, and how the listeners to this podcast can capitalise it. And we're very fortunate with our networks here that we get to dial into most people in and around property or property management in Australia, and we can pull them out and bring them on as guests. Today we have a returning guest, and I've been wanting to have a chat with her for quite some time, Cathie Crampton, who is the head of property management at LJ Hooker for Australia and New Zealand. Lots of things we're going to get into. We're going to keep it pretty free-flowing and loose today, and I'm happy to take this chat anyway. Cathie, how you going?
Very well,
You're right.
Thank you for having me.
So has property management ground to a halt because of the federal budget? Let's talk about
the dastardly budget.
Let's talk about it.
Look, it definitely has not ground to a halt. I think the media look the budget. There is no question the budget has some very challenging aspects. We're all aware of the capital gains treatment changes, and we're all aware of the negative gearing in particular. That is probably arguably the thing that people are most worried about. But it has not ground property management to a halt for a few reasons. Number one, whilst there is some product coming to market selling, arguably it's circa 1% of the entire rental pool. What really drives rental demand or rental availability is supply and demand. And our population continues to increase, and our immigration rates are only marginally down from the heights of post-COVID. So the reality is that when we have a national vacancy rate of 1.6%, which is what it is at the moment, and a normalised rate, that they like to see is somewhere in the vicinity of 3.5%, then we're going to continue to see both a demand for rental property and a rent increases, on average rent increases being applied. So the people that we are seeing sell their properties now are typically those who may already have chosen to sell. Potentially they've hit their affordability peak from an interest rate perspective, and I respect that. That's very challenging for them. But secondly, are people who may have just retired, and so they're makes sense for them financially to materialise some of those assets as they ready themselves for, self-funded retirement. So we're not seeing a whole bunch of landlords go, enough, the budget's done me in and I'm going to put my properties to market. If I were, I am a landlord, but if I were a current owner of investment property, to be honest with you, it'd be the last thing I'd be doing, because as I said earlier, there is still demand for rental property. 1.6% vacancy is still very low. And we will continue to see those rents increase whilst you hold those properties. Also, the negative gearing's been grandfathered. So if you currently are working, and you're paying your 47 cents in the dollar tax or 42 cents, I think is the next rate down, then it's not to your advantage to materialise that asset at this point, right? So there is a bit of, I'm not a financial advisor, can we just put that out there? But you wouldn't sell your rental property if you did not have to in this market.
I completely agree with you, and that's well considered. everyone talks about property being an asset, was an asset class.
Yeah.
But I now think there's layers of assets in and around property. That the property itself is an asset.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
It generates income. That's good. But it's also an asset if it is actually under this sort of grandfather provision.
Correct.
So you keep that. So there's another aspect to it. It's also an asset in terms of you wouldn't want to be selling your investment property now if it has debt connected with it, because you may struggle to get that debt again in the future because you wouldn't be able to secure debt with a negative gearing provision.
Correct.
So it's another asset.
Correct. There's another thing. And the thing that I think that there's a way that we need to start looking at rental property from a, let's say I'm a rent roll owner, so I'm a business owner, because what I think it's going to start doing is shifting how we determine value. Now, what I mean by that is not only have you got rental income on a property, potential negative gearing if you already own it, if it's not brand new, remember, so we'll just ignore the brand new component for a second. There's also tax depreciation opportunities, and that's been quite not well understood in terms of how much advantage that provides to an owner of a property, so a landlord.
A landlord, yeah.
So I think what I've been advising a number of our business owners to do is let's start elevating these other opportunities to create return on a property for our owners, so that we're not just talking about the rental income, because then there's more more opportunity for them to create income, and there's more advantage. And I think fundamentally when you buy a rental property, yes, we're talking about rental income and yield, and they're important considerations. But ultimately where you make the real money is on the capital appreciation of that asset, and that's why you can never get away from existing properties entirely.
Well, that's where a lot of the discussion is right now, when everyone's saying, well, in order to get negative gearing benefits, you've got to buy a new property. However,
yes, correct.
There's a lot of depending who you talk to, and be very careful if you're making arrangements as a property manager to try and support people with property investment advice through referrals and recommendations. There's a lot of people out there now going, it's all about new, but often there's a big premium connected with it. Again, we're not providing any financial advice.
No, let's be clear.
Here whatsoever, and make sure you're speaking with qualified advisor. But to your point for property managers, and I don't really like the term property manager per se, because everyone instantly pigeonholes them into the person that sits there and does the management bit, which is a little bit of part of it, right? They collect the rent and they make sure repairs and maintenance are done. But property management is so much bigger than that. And the opportunity for property managers, the property management sector, is, and everyone's spoken about it and talking about it for years, is to actually be asset managers.
Absolutely.
But no one's really, a handful of organisations have really captured what that is, but the whole industry needs a seismic shift to really cement itself as the centre of the relationship with the landlord, the property investment owner. And a lot of people, unfortunately, a lot of property managers go, oh, they're just a landlord. They think they're a landlord. They get pigeonholed as a landlord. No, they're just a person who has a life and has kids and this, that, and the other. One part of their life is that they happen to own an investment property, right?
Yeah,
but they're pigeonholed as such. So the opportunity there is for property managers to actually centre themselves in a relationship and be that trusted partner.
Advisor.
And that is depreciation. A lot of investors I know haven't got depreciation schedules.
Well, I mean, that's extraordinary, because I personally looked at one that I own and thought, this is a couple of years ago, I thought, briefly I might sell it. It had nothing to do with the budget. This is pre-budget. I'm never selling it now. However, and I had something like, there was several $100,000 in deductions, and this is not uncommon, okay? So I'm not an uncommon example of that. We're not asking property managers, to that point of yours, it's very important, because we're not asking property managers to be the financial advisor. But they are, I think there is an expectation in terms of value proposition that they become effective facilitators, and that they have a broad and general understanding of what value now looks like. And value does not look like what the tech can do. The tech can send out the quote request. It can do the automated follow-ups. It can actually arguably even process payments. So, and frankly, if you have the, what did we do during COVID? We got everybody to do their own inspections and upload it. Like there is a lot that we think that the property manager traditionally does that in fact is not really the value proposition of today. So I think there's a few things need to happen. I think the property managers, generally speaking, not exclusively, there's some great people, but generally speaking, we need to be training them differently. We need to coach them and help them understand that the role is not what it was even a year or 2 years ago. They need a different level of capability. They need to have the confidence to have a different type of conversation with their clients. And they don't need to be, as an example, the person sitting there going, well, you could depreciate that and you'll get at least $10,000 back. They don't need to say that.
No.
But they do need to have a relationship with a proven, trusted, partner who they are worded up appropriately to effectively connect the dots. They be the one who connects the dots. The owner thinks, wow, you've just provided great value to me.
Yeah, and the value in that relationship is critical. It's going to not only help with retention, but it's certainly going to get you a lot more referrals. As
Absolutely,
a property manager.
Absolutely.
You don't need to be a depreciation expert. And
that's just one example.
That's one example. And I think if anyone was, I think Alex caught up. I did a podcast with Brad Beer from BMT recently, and go and tune into that. And I think Brad speaks at length about that. But the property manager, it's really funny with property managers. I've got quite a large property investment portfolio, so I speak to a lot of property managers, and a lot of them, I'm even going to go so far to say most of them, just they keep it very generic and probably what they feel as though is inside their lane. No one has ever asked me. No one's ever asked me. I feel.
Have you got depreciation?
Have you sorted all your depreciation schedule?
Wow.
Or how you going lending at the moment? You got any plans going ahead? Just looking for opportunities to add value and maybe either avert some mistakes that I'm making and or offer opportunity around.
Well, then have recent events actually helped us? There's the opportunity, right, for the property manager because. Everybody wants. There's two things we're thinking about here. One, you want to demonstrate more value. You demonstrate more value, you'll get paid more. Right? We're all, at the end of the day, we all want to have a life. So, but to demonstrate more value, you do need to understand that the lane that you had is not the lane that you need. And that is it's different now. The type of role we need to play and the type of conversation we need to be comfortable to have is different.
Yeah, and that's courageous and also quite challenging because again, a lot of people frame property management and what property managers do as a very sort of, you're in this bucket and don't go outside of it. So, you have conversations now with people, or all employees across Australia, irrespective of the work they are, saying, well, what are you doing upskilling AI? Well, I'm waiting for my company to train me on it. It's like, that's not necessarily how it's going to work.
No.
You need to invest in yourself, deepen your skill sets and bring new ideas and new ways of doing things to your workplace if you want to increase your value inside of it.
Absolutely.
The same thing absolutely applies to property managers. Now, they need to have permission from the agency head or the principal to actually be a bit courageous and step outside and think differently about it. But I would say to a T that any property manager that was finding ways organically and proactively to add value to their landlords, their property investors, that the principal's going to go, keep doing what you're doing.
Well, I always bring it back to we're all in the business of growth, something I learned from Shane Smolin actually. And so if we're all in the business of growth, which we all are, that doesn't mean you have to be a BDM. It's just that we're all in the business of growth. So how do I grow as a property manager, whether it's the number of properties under asset or the return on property, per property that's under management, both for my client as well as for my business owner.
Yeah.
And if I'm having conversations that center around that philosophy, then naturally I need to step outside what has been the traditional role. But also it'll give you an opportunity, and I mean you as in the property manager, it gives them an opportunity to grow their own roles and opportunities and career and, income and all of those things because they are stepping outside a traditional lane and thinking differently.
And thinking differently and well, having permission to think differently or having the culture in order to do that, but actually doing it rather than just going, well, this is the way it is, I'll just do what I'm doing, I've got a job, you can have a job or a career, completely up to you. But you spoke there around, what the smart people are doing and having those conversations and at Manage we talk about either legacy agencies or next-gen agencies.
Yes.
We believe next-gen agencies are exactly the agencies that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Legacy agencies are just going to keep doing everything the same way and watch the world change around them. That's
Absolutely.
okay. That's all right. It's just going to be the way it is. However, it's a competitive mindset and investors are going to start becoming a lot more demanding as greater pressure gets put.
Well, I think the investors are already smarter. I mean, they talk a lot about mum and dad investors, and they talk a lot about institutional investors. We're not even, to be honest with you, most of the agencies, like say whether it's Elder Hooker or whomever, we're not typically dealing with institutional investors. They tend to manage their own.
Yeah.
Okay. Very occasionally you might get a bit of a build to rent building or something like that. So there's a bit of that. But fundamentally, we're all dealing with mum and dad investors, and they really just want simple things. And I don't mean they're simple people. I just mean they just want typically the optimal return with somebody that's looking after the property. And our job is to get them that optimal return. And that means that we need to be thinking a little more broadly than I think traditionally we've been expected to think.
Yeah.
And this, whether it's the budget, whether it's the cost of living, whether it's this so-called housing crisis, and yes, there's definitely a supply challenge, but all of those things have been driving towards this for some time. The budget, I think, has just exacerbated everybody going, well, now we really
Now
have
what
to
do we
do
do?
something.
Something
Okay?
has to happen.
Yeah.
Well, I have a bit of an issue with this concept of mum and dad investors. So it's either an institutional investor or a mum and dad investor. Well,
What's the
because
difference?
of the very different way in which, how property in Australia is managed. I think 93% of all rental properties are owned by an individual investor.
Yes,
So
it's
of
massive.
course they're probably going to be a mum or dad investor, but
Yeah, I
it sort of
understand.
assumes that it's dumbed down for them. They're not a mum and dad investor. They're an investor. They're a real estate investor.
Yeah.
They're investing in Australian real estate. But it gets thrown around mum and dad investors, so let's dumb it down for them.
Yeah.
But they've got lives. They've got everything else.
Well, I mean, I don't mean to suggest by using that term that they're not intelligent investors. Both, even if you don't classify one as, whether you're one or the other, irrelevant, everybody needs their optimal yield. Okay.
Absolutely. And that's the point.
And so and I think yield, I think traditionally is treated as, obviously in a pure sense, is treated as the rental, the gross rental income. But actually what we need to start thinking about is our job as agencies and property managers is to get the optimal return, total ROI on the property. So that's why I talk about things like depreciation schedules and or, rental income, or what are the improvements that somebody can make that are funded by, whether it's self-funded, meaning the owner puts the cash in, or whether they borrow a little bit of money and pay it over a period of time, because there's a lot of facilities out there, and they improve the property, which improves the total return. Right? So we have to start having those more meaningful types of conversations, which I don't think most agency owners are expecting their property managers to have.
Well, that's the opportunity, particularly those
Absolute
tuning
opportunity.
into this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you spoke about this balance of automation and technology and doing the doing. I really want to drill down into it, but we'll go to a quick break. Stay with us, everyone. Back in a moment.
Well, g'day everyone, it's Liam here. Now, if you're starting to feel a little bit overwhelmed with your compliance to-do list and a little bit irritated with everything that's coming through the pipeline to make sure that you are compliant, well, I have a solution for you. It's Visible, VIS, IBL, an end-to-end compliance platform that's been built specifically for Aussie real estate. Visible makes it simple to get your agency compliant. So whether it's minimizing the paperwork headache or handling AUSTRAC enrollment, risk assessment and policy, customer verifications, team training, and more, it's a platform built for the industry and built to actually make compliance simple. Check out Visible at visibl.com.au.
Welcome back. Phil Tarrant standing in for Alex Whitlock as the host of the PMX podcast, chatting with Cathie Crampton, who's the head of property management over at LJ Hooker ANZ. So mainly Australia, not so much
We have
New Zealand.
100,000 properties under management.
Yeah.
We have 95,000 in Australia and just shy of 5,000 in New Zealand.
Is it the same or different? I know Kiwis are often a little bit slower.
Well, I love New Zealand, actually.
It's good. I get out there all the time.
They're very heartfelt and they're
do
very
like the
passionate about their
Kiwis.
property management.
Yes.
No, it's not. It's really not that different. It's really not. There's some different rules. I mean, New Zealand traditionally has had a little bit more of a leaning to, housing standard expectations. They're very legislatively orientated, but most of the states in Australia have shifted in that direction now, particularly with the recent trend of shifting a lot of the housing responsibility, if you like,
down to the mum and dad investor.
Down to the investor. Okay, as the government's shifted their position on various things. But the point is that they're really not fundamentally that different. There's similar affordability issues. There's similar supply challenges. There's been similar interest rate challenges, although arguably our interest rates are a little bit higher than NZ. Probably the biggest shift traditionally, and this is aligning, is that more properties in New Zealand were self-managed than agency-managed, and it was the reverse in Australia, but that is starting to slowly even out. Yeah.
Okay.
Not to the same level yet, but evening out.
And are they having very similar conversations around this idea of how PMs could operate in a new modern sort of sophisticated environment?
Yeah, they are. Yeah. We definitely have more in Australia, just because we're larger, we definitely have more layers in that. And I think there are pockets of all of our cities that, you will see agencies and property managers who operate differently. New Zealand's a little less layered, but still similar conversation for sure.
Yeah.
Everybody, and I think this is something we need to accept ongoing as property management professionals, is that we are always demonstrating value, and that value proposition is always shifting. So the agility piece becomes really critical.
Agility is key, and agility of thought, agility of capability, agility in culture, agility all over the place. And you touched on it very quickly, this idea of automation and technology. And I think about automation technology, and everyone is obsessed with automation at the moment, and AI doing all these inverted commas tasks. And I saw Alex Whitlock penned a piece maybe a week or two ago where he spoke about the unique competitive advantage in property management is the role of the person.
Yeah.
Automation will do a lot of the heavy lifting, and technology stuff like Manage will do a lot of automated payments, right? So that's all taken care of. Machines and technology and robots can do all that sort of stuff. So how are you supporting your agencies across the LJ Hooker network to sort of have a comfortable relationship with technology and automation versus empowering the person?
There's probably two things. We do, but most recently, we've just run an entire what we call our Momentum series, which is like the big Kickstart series that we run at the beginning of the year. And the entire theme of the day, both sales, PM, leadership rooms, all of it was all around AI. We also have a company-approved AI piece of tech, if you like. I mean, it's a partner, and we, everybody is expected to be able to use that, and everybody does use that. And the point around that really is that we have a mindset that is we are AI friendly.
Yeah.
Okay. That is the real key piece there. But we definitely position it as this is a tool. Let's leverage this tool. Let's get more productive. Let's get more effective. However, that you can't take away from that human component of vetting and supporting and communicating and what's the role of the person per se. But it isn't just about AI. That's been the latest, greatest big thing, hasn't it? And that's been arguably the biggest shift of the last couple of years, I think. But even before that, tech was playing an increasingly varied role within property management and even within LJ Hooker. Specifically that was that we have a lot of business partnerships with different tech providers. We are a very tech-orientated company, like very. So, but we always have that provision, and I always argue this, that what problem are you trying to solve? Let's not just bolt on a piece of tech for the sake of it. And I see that a lot in property management, because you not only have a look at the P&Ls, but you have a conversation with someone and they go, but I've got all these, what's your tech stack? And they'll go, oh, well, I've got this and I've got this and I've got this. And I'll go, well, then you should be able to, your PM should be running this many properties. So this whole capacity conversation comes into play, which is what tech should be providing you, is increased capacity for your person to have a different type of conversation. But what's happened largely with a lot of people is that they've bolted on a bunch of tech products without understanding, one, the purpose of it, and two, optimizing the utilization of it. So they have just made their lives more complicated and not improve their productivity.
Yeah, and you hear this all the time, and you talk about productivity there, and good productivity typically leads to better profit, right? And that would be the idea. However, this is you can have all these great conversations around changing the way in which and how property managers operate. But if you have property managers that think, oh, the most properties I can manage is 100 or 80 or 150, you go, yeah, but if you've got technology and automation doing 50 to 60% of what you used to do, that should assume that you should be able to do ... And I go, no, but it's always like that many, and that's the industry standard. And that's the challenge. A lot of
that is a big
PM
challenge.
PM
owners.
Yeah,
I totally respect that. I totally get that. I would spend a lot of because I'm in a lot of different rooms. A lot of my conversation in the leadership rooms is around helping the business owners understand true productivity and their true capacity and what their PMs, what does a good PM day or week actually look like, and BDMs for that matter.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yes, that is a definite challenge, but increasingly we've just got to keep having that conversation with business owners because, the profit levels of 30, 40, 45%, 50%, they are achievable. I had businesses running at that level only a couple of years ago. Okay, it hasn't changed that much in the last 2 years. COVID was over before that. The wage increases had already come into play. It is definitely possible. It is just you need to be optimal about your time, your focus areas, what the tech does for you versus what you do, and you start training to better types of thinking and conversation.
It's a tough one. I think property management sector, the business of property management is often overlooked as a serious business. Normally it's and I'm going to stereotype here and I apologise, but the husband's a sales agent and the wife does the PM, and that's the way it works, right? Or whatever your version there is.
Sure.
And this is how a lot of these businesses have operated and sort of emerged. But property management as a business, it is a thriving, sometimes complicated, but also quite simple business. But it's got to be treated as a business rather than as, that's just the PM arm of our real estate business, real estate being sales business. So
I understand.
I think we need to start having a lot more conversations about property management and as business owners and how you actually go about building a business in property management.
Yeah, there are two. They have different, sales businesses and PM businesses have different dynamics. I often use the description that a sales business is, tends to have higher, like that you'll do higher volume, you'll do a sale and you might make, for argument's sake, $25,000 gross. I know there's commission splits and stuff, but just say you might make that. Whereas your property under management, your rent roll, tends to be a, high volume, low margin type business. So you might make $2,500 per property per year gross, okay, per property per year. So you can't afford mistakes and you can't afford not to be growing, because there's natural loss and there's all those sorts of things. These are dynamics that a lot of sales-orientated principals don't understand, and so we continue to try and educate people around that sort of thing, but they're different dynamics. And that is why in one instance, again, I'm not giving financial advice, but it is good to treat them as separate businesses and it's good to have them with separate P&Ls, whether you have separate entities or not is an accounting question, but I always sort of suggest you do. But, it's separate P&Ls because then you can see the true performance of each of those businesses. Yeah. The advantage of the rent roll, we all know this, is it's valued on its revenue line, which people find incredible.
Let's chat about that for PM for PM owners at the moment, or the owners of rent rolls.
Yes.
And sometimes you're an owner of the rent roll, but you're not in the business of property management.
I understand.
Or you are a property manager and you own rent rolls or a rent roll. I would think that because of the change that we're speaking about and how the issues with housing affordability and really low vacancy rates and property investors, there's going to be reluctance to sell moving forward. One of the and potentially less invested in the market is going to put a lot of upwards pressure on rents, and most commentators are saying that rents will increase.
Yes.
Well, that essentially is a direct upward lift on the valuation of every single rent roll in Australia because they're going to be yielding more.
Correct.
So
if I were in the rent roll business, if I were today owning a business, I would be buying rent rolls. Okay. Now you've got to factor in interest rates and how long it takes you to pay it off if you're borrowing money. A lot of people are not. But there's a lot of businesses in Australia, and I know it from our own network, that are not sitting on a lot of debt in their rent rolls. And one of those trains of thought is always buy an income-producing asset. So if you're going to leverage your rent roll, make sure it's an income-producing asset, okay? And I think there's two things happening in the industry at the moment. There are people that are, reaching an age where they're thinking of retiring and they might materialise that rent roll asset if there's not a succession within their own business. So they might sell down in their own business or they might sell that rent roll. And if you are a business owner who understands the capacity in your business, so you could, let's say you've got a capacity of 200 properties, you could go and buy a rent roll, drop it straight in, not even increase your cost to serve.
Yeah.
So there's great opportunity out there. And while this podcast is not focused on this, there are ways to buy rent rolls that are, make them more viable to purchase.
I think a lot of real estate principals, if they haven't done anything like it before, are quite daunted by the
Sure.
idea, and there's a lot of risk and everything associated. But there's a lot of people out there to help, no doubt.
Absolutely.
LJ, probably you have your own mechanism for
We
supporting.
do. We do have in-house, guidance. I provide that guidance actually, but I mean, we do have in-house support mechanisms, and we also have relationships with the likes of Pendium Finance, Stuart Hobden and Co, who are terrific business partners. So I think every environment probably has some form of, I hope, but we certainly do. So, but I think there's great opportunity out there, and there will be people out there who will sell because it has become too complicated for them. There is a lot of regulation.
Yeah.
It is difficult. I totally respect that. But if I was sitting in business today and I had, a rent roll and what have you, I'd be looking at this going, we still have a supply problem. We're never going to fix that. We still have, valuations based on revenue, and I have very, arguably very limited LVR. So I'm quite.
Yeah.
I own quite a lot of it. I'm going to look for an opportunity because I can go and buy that.
I completely get that.
Yeah.
And a lot of there is some fatigue amongst sort of PM owners or PMs in general, but PM property manager owners in relation to just how much more compliance there is today, I see it much like your accounting sector are essentially an arm of that. They do the implementation of the ATO.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
They do it all, and it's compliant. The ATO goes, that's good, sweet, no worries. Like imagine trying to collect tax without all the accountants are in the middle.
Yeah, that's right.
Good luck to all the fair tradings or whatever the related version of that is in every single state to try and put all these changes around compliance and regulation in property management without the property management being there.
Yeah.
And a lot of them go, this is all too hard.
All too hard.
Yeah, there is opportunities there. But what sort of multiples are you seeing at the moment on sort of rent rolls?
Look, it varies by state. I've seen Adelaide's the one that surprised me the most recently. It's sitting up to sort of 4.8.
Okay.
Which is massive, I think.
Wow.
But in Sydney, it's, a 4 in front of it's very common, except for the more regional locations, you might be seeing the mid to mid-ish threes. But Queensland, I'm seeing mid threes up to kind of 4.2s. Regionally, again, slightly. I know one that just transacted in Cairns for 3.5. Like it's, this is not uncommon now. Now, not that many years ago, maybe 5-10 years ago, 3.5 would have been the height.
Yeah.
But now the fours is quite common.
And for those of our listeners out there building rent rolls for the purpose of either crystallising it through sale and or leveraging it to continue to grow, what are the sort of two or three aspects of a rent roll today which really attracts the highest multiples? How good does it need to be?
Yep. Transparent data. So if you are purchasing a rent roll and you look at one and the data is you can see, what the property's making, the inspections are up to date, all that sort of thing. So that operational transparency, if that's there, that's the first thing. If you can see that all the rent increases have been applied and they're within cooey of what the market says it should be, very easy data to find. You can do your own Googling for that. So that's a very important piece. And if you see a rent roll that has had net growth, and the reason you want that is because you can never, as a purchaser, you can't always see what are the reasons why those properties have left. And if you see something that's reduced, let's say it's reduced 10% a year, that would say to me, I'm not going to pay the highest multiple for that. Okay, I'm going to pay a lesser multiple. And the final piece is looking at the AAMI, or the average annualised management income per property.
Okay.
So a lot of the times when people are looking to sell, they just put a blanket multiple on the whole rent roll. When I'm purchasing, I often will say to a purchaser, have a look at what's your cost to serve in your business. So what's your capacity first, understand that. What's your cost to serve in your business? Anything that sits under your AAMI of your cost to serve, that's not as valuable to you because you're running at a loss. So let's pay X for that and let's pay Y for the others.
So you can cluster it up and pay
cluster it. Yeah, so there's, and that's part of how you purchase them. But when you're selling a rent roll, you obviously make sure your rent increases are done, your files are complete, so that you look as good as you can look and you can support that high multiple.
So my view is that a business should always be prepared for sale. even though
Yeah,
you might
good
not have
point.
an intent to
Yeah.
do it. You should
Yeah.
always be building
Do
the best
it,
measure you
do an
possibly
in-house
can.
audit.
So you
Yeah.
don't need to scramble at a point in time when you go, oh, we need to do
Yeah, I had a
stuff,
conversation with one of our larger rent roll owners only yesterday, and they do a monthly audit and a monthly net reconciliation of properties under management. Back in the days when I was running a bunch of rent rolls for a guy called Shane Small at McGrath, we did that monthly. We did a net reconciliation of where we stood with everything, operational as well as a net position of properties under management.
Yeah, and no doubt the people are key.
Yeah, and when
to
he
this type of
sold it, he
stuff.
sold it for a multiple that was hands down $1 higher than the standard multiple going at that time.
Yeah, because it had good integrity.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about sort of culture inside of some property management business, but we'll just go to another break. Stay with us, back in a moment. Welcome back, Phil Tarrant. This is the PMX podcast, chatting with Cathie Crampton over at LJ Hooker, Head of Property Management, ANZ. Now, I think you guys have nearly 300 offices.
We have 300 offices. We have 100,000 properties under management.
Okay. How many people would sort of work inside of? There'd be a lot, right?
That's a big
You
question.
think about it. Anyway,
We have 4,000 employees
Okay.
across the board. I can't tell you exactly how many PM. I'm sorry, actually.
Okay. No.
But we have, let me put it this way. I've just finished doing all the award submissions and there were
There's a lot.
And
Yeah.
it's a big job. Yeah.
So you must see inside a lot of different property management operations across the LJ network. How different are they all?
Look, there are definite variations. I think you'd see this across the industry.
Yeah.
But the thing that I can genuinely say about LJs, and I've been around a couple of brands now, is they do. I actually always say that I think property management is, at the beating heart of this network because it's such an old network. We're coming up to our centenary in 2028, so 100 years. And it is an old network and it's established and there are some big rent rolls and there's some very rent roll savvy business owners and they take a lot of pride. We award a lot of categories within property management. So, there's a genuine pride there. So the difference in business operations, there is a lot more transparency in this network. They do measure a lot more. We have performance dashboards that we help, that we can see, that the businesses submit, that we can then help them be guided. We have still some very small rent rolls, without question. We do have an average size under management of 412, which is on the larger end.
Yeah, it is.
When you think about every office. But we have some as high as 4,000, and we have a vast majority that sit over 1,000 properties. We have a lot that sit between 1,000 and 2,500.
Okay.
So there's some good sizes in there.
And when obviously, because it's part of the LJ Hooker network, there's a particular operating rhythm to that. There would be sort of culture would be homogenous in some ways because they all operate under the same banner and the same brand. However, no doubt every offer is a little bit different. What is it when you walk into an agency and you go, gee, there's a real heartbeat here. There's
totally.
great culture here. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot. I've just finished doing another tour around Australia doing all our skills training. And so the officers come, we regionalise it, so they come to us. And the thing that I really observed, that I have not observed in any other brand, is a lot of them wear a uniform. Now, I'm not necessarily a personal advocate of uniforms. It's just that they take pride in it. There's the badges, there's the jackets, everything's monogrammed. They take pride and they look, professional. They actually look professional. I like that aspect of it. They're very keen to learn. They're very curious. They strive for the awards. I'd regularly get queries about, well, how can I, be eligible for captains? Or I really wanted to submit this year, but I haven't been here for the full year. So, whatever that looks like. But when I walk into the office environments, and I also do a lot of that, you can see they'll have either dashboards on screens or they may have whiteboards or there are things, they're operating like that and there's a calmness to the environment and they're clean and tidy. And I know they sound like really simple things.
Clean and tidy is a real
but
indicator.
And you don't see, they're organised, they're laughing, there's a lot of fun, our LJ Hooker Penrith office is one example, the principal, the senior PM there as well, she is, just had a birthday and she was actually with me delivering training that day. So the office got together and put like a little face of her right on a chair and then they filmed a video and they took her and got a donut and then they sang to her and the whole thing's very funny. And it's just, that's the sort of culture you see. Like they actually have fun with it, just across the board.
And how do you think that translates into better outcomes for investors when you have a good company culture?
I think they care. I think they take pride. I think they think around the situation and try and solve it. Like there's that real problem-solving mentality. They're not just sitting there ticking and flicking boxes, which is a common complaint in property management generally.
Yeah.
Is that, I sent them an email, I either didn't hear something back, or they just, all I ever hear is they just send me, expenses to approve, as opposed to having some proactive type conversations. They're definitely more engaged. There's a property management culture inside this network that I haven't seen before.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on with that. Where I know a lot of property managers probably can bemoan investors, and no doubt I'm probably one of those investors.
Are you annoying, Phil?
I'm not annoying. I just I'll get a phone call from someone and go, "Oh, hi, Phil, just calling about your property," and I go, "Which property?"
Yeah.
They just there's just assumptions. I think there's a lot of assumptions that property managers have about investors, which might not necessarily be right, or because they're under this sort of tick and flick regime where they're just going next in, done.
They're not hop up and think.
They're not up there thinking about it. And I think that really is
that's important
at the heart of an next gen agency, because
correct.
That's going to not only going to create a lot of value in a relationship, but it's going to be a sticky relationship, and property investors talk.
Absolutely. And get to know, I mean, this is coming back right where we started to, what does value look like? And so it's not just about get to know your client. It's also, and what type of conversation are we having now that actually demonstrates value? Like think like your client before you have the conversation with the client. Think like them, and don't just label them and say, so and so doesn't like to spend money. Well, that's actually never the case. What it is you need to demonstrate the value about why it provides a purpose for them to spend the money. What does that look like?
Take the time to engage.
Take the time.
Basis,
that's right.
And that's where automation can help. If you've got more time to do the engagement bit, you're going to have much better outcomes. But we could talk about this all day, Cathie, but I'm conscious of the time. Thanks for coming in. Have a chat.
Thank
really
you.
Good.
Thank you for having
Sort of
me.
trying to solve all the things that are right and wrong about property management. But to your point around yields, it's structurally it's a good thing to own as a rent roll.
Absolutely.
Because if yields are increasing, that means
there's opportunity all around. There is opportunity as a property manager. There's opportunity as a business owner. There's opportunity as I hate the word landlord, but let's call it property owner, or investor. There's opportunities all round, and that's the piece that I think we need to stay focused on. If you know what the problem is, you could solve it.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's no, and it is fundamental. We get very complicated, but there is a fundamental thing that drives rent, and that is supply and demand.
Yes. You got to take the time to actually understand the problem to solve.
Yes, correct.
And they're out there, but really insightful. Thanks for coming in. It's
Thank
great.
you.
We'll get you back in again soon. And
Lovely.
Alex Whitlock will be back next week, I believe, for the PMX podcast. And I know we speak at length around most of our conversations is sort of focused on how do we support this sector to evolve and shape what is we believe a very bright future for property management in Australia, and that is property management businesses and the people that craft careers inside of it. So no doubt a lot more of those conversations on the PMX podcast. Obviously the big PMX event is coming up at the back end of this year.
Indeed.
No doubt you'll probably get collared too.
I am collared.
You're already collared,
I'm collared, yes.
All right. So already collared. It's hugely successful last year. And,
it was great. I loved it last year.
And this year will be a much more engaging, even though it was a great inaugural event for that. So stay tuned for that. And no doubt you can go and read a lot more about property management on realestatebusiness.com.au. I'd get in trouble if I didn't remind everyone to go there. So go and check out REB, no doubt part of your daily habit already, but realestatebusiness.com.au. We'll see you again next time. Until then, bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property, or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.